welcome back to the S.H.E Gallery Show. Thank you for being with us today. My name is Dulce Maria Diaz. I am director, founder of S.H.E Gallery, and I am your host for today. I am here with our guest, Tim Arroyo. Thank you for being with us, Tim. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good, good. Thank you. And you are live on CAN TV, and you are welcome to join us in conversation throughout the segment. Call us at 312-738-1060. And please remember that you can always find us through our website at sharinghisenergygallery.net. You can email me directly. You can call me directly for more information on the S.H.E Gallery. And to connect with any of our previous guests, our guests today, you can always find them through our website. So we have a lot of history to go through today, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. So Tim Arroyo is a photographer. He's a graphic designer. And he is a native of our neighborhood. He's from our community. He's from Pilsen, Little Village, and that's where he grew up. So you're very familiar with the hood, right?
I am.
And since very early on, he started playing with the camera, with his father's camera. I believe that was the Canon A1E. Is that correct?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And like a lot of us sometimes were bad kids at school. When I first met Tim, he mentioned how he remembered watching our segment from last season and remember Diane Pasola, who we miss. And she's at home. She's pregnant with little baby Jimmy. We look forward to meeting Jimmy, hopefully next season or whenever we can have them back. We're very proud of them. She's also an educator. So you don't really care too much for school. You go to summer school. You get kicked out. Yeah. You don't really care that much. But then something happens in your junior year of high school, right? You're going to Holy Trinity, and your mom works at Marshall Fields. Mm-hmm. We miss Marshall Fields.
Yeah.
And you're walking through the store, and what happens?
Well,
what changes your life?
We're walking down Wabash, and there's a print gallery there, and there's this image in the window, and it just caught my eye, and it was life-changing. You know, beams started coming down from the clouds and things of that nature. It turns out that it was a print from a graphic designer named Patrick Nagel. So years down the line, found out who he was and did some research into him, found out that he was a graphic designer, and at one point in my life I said, that's what I'm going to become. I'm going to become a graphic designer.
That's awesome. So that's the influence, that's what ignited?
Right. That was my first influence, yeah.
That was your first, and very early on. So he knew that he didn't care too much for school, but he knew what he did care for. And he knew that he needed to find out how to do this, right? That was like your initial interest.
Right, yes.
That's awesome. So touching back on culture, growing up, we play this role of monkey see, monkey do, especially at home, right? So like you had an older brother who was a very good student.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And he went on to college?
Yes. Yeah.
So you know that grammar school, high school, college, immediately. It's not like an option to say like, no, you just know that you have to go.
Right.
And you go.
Yeah.
And you want to be an architect?
I wanted to be an architect at first. Yeah, I said to myself that I'm going to be the next Mike Brady. We used to watch Brady Bunch all the time, so I said, yeah, I'm going to be Mike Brady.
Influenced by our culture, right?
Right, exactly. And so I went to my first college, right out of high school, went to UIC, and at that time, I had 3 classes, and of course those classes had nothing to do with architecture. And so it was at that point where I said, what's the point of coming to school? This is not why I came to college. I came here to learn architecture, and why do I have to take math, and why do I have to take English?
I knew it in like school.
Yeah, and so... but that's any typical student. Why do I have to take these classes? Mm-hmm. And so that's one of my philosophies
really
now.
Ridiculous, right?
Yeah. Well,
it was like a study class that you did nothing.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
A math class that you take your own book and figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, and you're paying a lot of money for this, for these institutions. Right. Mm-hmm. And later we'll find out how these bad experiences ended up helping him as an educator himself. It was something that he remembered and said, there's no way I'm going to do this ever, because it's just not fair to the student. Mm-hmm. And throughout this time, you're working at Harris Bank. It seems that bank had a few different keys of importance. Please talk to us a little bit more about those keys of importance.
The first one was in tuition reimbursement. So as far as tuition reimbursement goes, Harris Bank had a program for it. So I didn't know much about it. All I knew is that they would reimburse for classes that had something to do with um, with with some of the departments within the bank. So I knew that there was a graphic design type program within our department within the bank itself. So assuming that I would get reimbursement, I went to one school and filled out the forms, took the classes, submitted my grades, and then was denied the reimbursement.
Damn.
So then I left that school to go to another school and try it again. So went through the entire process and once again was denied. So then I went to another school and did the same thing and again was denied. And then it was one of those points where I said, okay, what am I doing wrong? What do I have to do? And then I found out that there were certain schools that you had to go to in order to get the reimbursement, and it didn't matter if what you were taking as long as you went to one of these accredited schools. So I ended up getting my associate's degree from Robert Morrison Graphic Arts.
And what were some of the schools that you attended during this trial and error process?
Oh,
What did
boy.
you learn?
So I started out with architecture, of
For
course,
somebody who
with
doesn't like
yeah,
school,
but wasn't learning architecture. The next school was Ray Vogue. For anybody who remembers Ray Vogue, that was in the Sun Times building.
We missed the Sun Times building.
Yeah, I miss Ray Vogue. But while I was there, I studied photography. So that was my first real experience with a photographic program. And of course, I learned with a 4x5 camera. You know, they put something that was humongous in my hands and said, go out and take pictures. So I didn't really understand it, but I learned. And I became very passionate about it. And so the next school that I went specifically for photography, which was the American Academy of Art. And then I left there because I wanted to get back into graphic design again. So I went to Triton and then Columbia. And then during all of this, I was at Columbia when I did some research and found out that graphic design is eventually going to become digital, that it's all going to be done on computers versus the way that we were doing everything manually. And so I left Columbia to go to another school that said that they had computerized design, which turns out was CAD. Not what I was looking for, but I stuck that out simply because I got to use a tablet. That was my first experience with a CalCount tablet. And I was turned on to tablets ever since then, and I've been using one ever since. Pen and tablets, that is. It just makes the whole process so much easier, photographically and illustration-wise.
It's a hell of an evolution. For some of us that don't know about the first digital camera, back in 1975, it was invented by Steven Sasson. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, and it was Kodak that started that out. That was 42 years ago, right? Tim is now, can we share your age?
Sure, I'm 52.
Tim is now 52. So you've been in this like entire movement of the digital age. You ran through like your first introduction to this digital image at Marshall Fields. Can you give us an idea of like what year frame that was?
Well, that was not done digitally. That was done with pen and paint.
Wow.
So that's how I first started, with pen and paint, and then that evolved into working digitally, working electronically. But that was much further down the line, and this was taking place back in the late '80s, mid to late '80s, and then I started working with the computer and software in the early '90s.
And we've seen how fast it's grown since.
Oh, absolutely.
It's
yeah.
nuts. One thing that I mentioned that I didn't mention earlier was when I first also met with Tim. First I met Tim through Instagram. I don't know if you guys follow our website, but I've worked with Piloto before. We'll continue to work with Piloto. We're very excited about upcoming projects. But Tim Arroyo was one of the photographers, or the photographer that did the work for Piloto's work. And in there, I started following Tim Arroyo, and I was like, wow, this is different. like you see so many tricks and all of these apps now. But when I saw his work, I just knew that it was authentic. And I said, there was something about it. And when I met with him, I understood why, because he's been in it. Like he understands it, the program, the softwares, and since it was first kind of like created, or when it was initially around. And one of the things that he mentioned that I was like, wow, is that he knew that he had to stay ahead of time, and that these images, they were able to create these illusions, and imaging allowed for that. What fascinated you most about these this new way of taking photographs or working with this different medium?
Well, it was just exciting. You know, you're at the time we're taking photographic prints and we're scanning them in, or we're taking film and we're scanning it in, and then we're taking it into the computer and then we're manipulating them on the computer, which itself was very exciting, because now we're out of the darkroom. In a darkroom, it's exciting to put the paper in and then take it out to the developer and have this image, or once it's in the developer, you see the image start to come up, and that's very exciting in itself. But now we're moving into this electronic age where you take these scans and you take these images and you put them on a computer, and now you can do whatever you want with them. You can push these little pixels. You had to understand the pixels. You could push them around and do all this other stuff with them. It was a very exciting time. And for anybody who's familiar with Photoshop, I've been working with Photoshop since version 2. This was before layers. That means that you had to do a lot of thinking about how you wanted to create your images. There was a thought process that was involved in it.
Process.
Yeah, it was a process. Oh, it was a.
Go back at animation.
It was
you
a
think back
tough
to Walt
process.
Disney when you're doing everything like hand. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, so you have to make selections, and you have to use channels, and then you have to copy and paste things, because that was the only way it could be done. And then once you let go of the image and it snapped into place, that was it. The only thing you could do was undo once, and there was only one undo at that time as well.
Oh.
So yeah,
all you get is one shot.
Yeah. So now it's become a whole lot easier. And back in those days, you know, it was one of those things that, first of all, digital photography, it was frowned upon. People were doing kind of the same style of work, and that's what I wanted to get away from. I wanted to have my own identity. So I didn't want my work to look like everybody else's, because I would show people my work and like, oh, this person has a great filter. Why don't you take a look at theirs? I'm like, do you know how hard I worked on this? Yeah, and that's kind of how it is. You know, making reference to the Instagram. Instagram, you can apply effects. Yeah, click on a little thing. Yeah, exactly. and so, as far as my my work goes, I try to avoid those things, and I try to push the technology.
Much respect for you, to you.
All right.
For you, to you. At some point, when you finally got all your credits right, let's go back to Harris Bank.
Let's go back to Harris.
Because I thought that was really cool. He's
Okay.
got so much. So one of the perks, or one of the cool, like, this door closes, this door opens experience that you went through, was that you were actually let go from Harris Bank.
Yeah.
You got let go, and then you were rehired.
Yeah.
You were rehired to do what you love, and became like a senior
designer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that experience cool, because it wasn't so cool to get fired. But yeah, in hindsight, it was pretty cool to get fired, because I had a month off.
Sometimes you don't
anyways,
know.
really, that's not cool. But anyways, I did get let go, but at the time, prior to being let go, I had applied for a position in the desktop publishing department, and so while I was off, I got a phone call for an interview, and so I came in for the interview and explained to my boss what happened, or who would eventually become my boss, what happened, and she said, "I'm going to give you a chance." And
another shot.
Yeah, another shot, exactly.
Sometimes you get two shots.
And she had no regrets.
That's
I tell you that.
awesome.
She had no regrets. And that allowed me to go back to school. So I as far as the
For
schooling went,
somebody that didn't like school.
Oh, here I go into another school. So
Columbia.
so I go to Columbia, and I go undeclared, which means that I can study whatever I want. So the emphasis was on graphic design once again, and more specifically on photography. So I studied a lot more photography, and then got my bachelor's degree. from Columbia. So that was the last undergrad school that I went to, which makes 6. Or made 6, yeah.
Wow. And something happens in Colombia while you're there and you're a student.
Yeah.
Somebody says, "What the hell are you doing?
Yes.
Why are you a student? You should be a teacher."
Yeah. So,
Dun, 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 dun.
yeah, so
And you made room for another shot.
Yeah, I did. So I spent a lot of time in Photoshop because I liked it so much, and my very last class at Columbia was an advanced Photoshop class. So at the time, we didn't have the benefit of screens and everybody sitting at their own desk while an instructor is going over. It's, okay, everybody gather around, let me show you how to do this, now go back to your computers and do what I just showed you. So it was really difficult for most students, but I was already familiar with the software, so it was really simple for me. Mm-hmm. And then I started helping everybody in the class, and one of the students said, why are you even in this class? You should be teaching the class. And so that prompted me, once I graduated, to put together my resume and put together a collection of images in something, in a multimedia application, and then hand deliver those to some of the... Hand delivered to
Not
some
emailed.
of the... No,
Hand.
we didn't have that at the time. Or actually, we might have, but anyways.
Physically walked and handed them. Hire
Yes.
me. I don't know if you're looking, but hire me.
Yeah. And within a week, I got a call from what would be the International Academy of Design and Technology. And I was hired over the phone within in a 15-minute conversation.
What was the interview question?
Oh no, that wasn't this one.
Oh,
this
that was
was,
Harrington.
This was
We'll
for,
get
this
there.
was
We'll
for
get there.
Harrington.
Yes.
Yeah, so
That's a fun one. Don't let me forget it.
So I was brought in, and I was an adjunct for 2 semesters, and then they asked me to come in full time. So I did. I made a life change. I left Harris almost at 15 years, my 15-year anniversary, and started teaching. That was 17 years ago.
And that was a tough decision to make.
It was.
Think about so
It
much
was.
time that you put into a facility and all the benefits that come through it and all of the risk, and you did it and no regrets, right?
Nope, none at all.
Wow. So continue to tell us about your experience as a teacher and its evolution and where you're at now with it.
Well, when I came in, when I started, but here's the thing about when I started teaching, everything was already electronic. Everything was already being taught on computers. So from my experience as a student before computers to this point now, that's a different evolution because there weren't computers. We didn't start getting computers until much later on. Everything was done manually. So again, there was a different thought process there. But I've been teaching with computers ever since, and what we're seeing as far as those go is that they're becoming faster, the software is becoming easier, it's more user-friendly. It wasn't user-friendly at the beginning, but now it is. So there's a lot that you can do with them.
And that's just the work aspect, and then we're also talking about the curriculum. So after you leave the academy, you also start teaching at Harrington.
Yeah.
That no longer really exists anymore.
Right, that's correct.
And when I met with Tim, I met him at Columbia College when he tells me that he's a teacher at Harrington. And then I learned that this was like truly a dying breed.
Yes.
Briefly talk to us about that, and then let's jump into your arcs. We're like winding down.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Harrington is closed. We're in the teach-out process, which means that we're teaching our last remaining students.
Crazy.
Yeah, and it's not just Harrington that has been affected. There's a lot of things that affect higher education, and one was the state of Illinois not having a budget, but it's not just happening here. You know, I know other educators from around the country, and the conversations have been the same over the past few years, where enrollment is declining, and with declining enrollment comes school closings, or at least faculty or other positions being eliminated.
And we're talking about places that had some real potential that were really, really big.
Absolutely.
So really quick, because I know we're winding down, let's talk about you and your art. And I don't want to talk too much, but there's a lot. There's like a political aspect, a very intuitive aspect. Please talk to us and share some of your images.
Yeah, so right now what I would say that I'm focusing on is, I wouldn't call it a focus because I have so many focuses. I'm kind of scatterbrained when it comes to my work. But what I spent a lot of time on, what I brought are mobile images. So things that I'm capturing with.
Oh, you put them on here, I'm sorry.
I'll put them here. So things that I'm capturing with with mobile devices. So these would be images that, just walking down the street, I'm taking photographs of things that I see and that I find interesting, and I'll just capture them with an iPhone. And then what I'll do is I'll manipulate them in various softwares. So they're all multiple images. There's no single capture here. And in pushing the technology, what I'm doing is I'm just strictly doing this with my fingers. So I'm not using a computer at all. It's all either done on an iPad or it's done on an iPhone. And just creating these composites. And a lot of these images I'm just finding in the neighborhood. So in Pilsen, I ride my bike to work. And so every day as I'm going by, I just look at things and see what I can capture and see what I can put together. So you might recognize many of the locations that are in here, but that's kind of what my focus is right now. I just have a lot of fun taking that, and we have the technology now. And it becomes easy to do, and I can do this stuff while I'm laying in bed, for example, and keep everybody up because I have a light on all the time. It's like, Daddy, why are you looking at your phone? Like, I'm not. I'm making pictures, and it's kind of hard for the kids to understand that. I think they don't find that difficult to understand, but
In the era that we live in.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'll just finish off with this one because you may have question in regards to this.
Yes, actually, I really wanted to touch on the political aspect of what you're doing. Aside from being a teacher and an artist yourself, you were also at the No Dapple. You were down at Standing Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Please talk to us a little bit more about your experience there, and if we do have time, like a minute wrap up, to talk to us about your experience with the Adobe, where you were just at the Adobe Education Summit. It's a lot.
Well, it was another.
Please visit our website. More information, so much more information about Tim and more of his digital works. That's just a little tiny bit of what he does. His illusion work is amazing. I mean, he's just got a lot. So please visit us on our website and please talk to us a little bit about your experience in Standing Rock.
Yeah, so I was invited by a friend of mine, David Robert Farmery, who had been there, and he's another photographer, and he invited me to come along because he wanted to see how I would capture the people there. Unfortunately, at the time when I got there, this was when the police were coming in to take the camp that was directly in line with blocking Dapple. So they needed to remove this camp in order to complete the construction. So this took place in October of 2016, and to see everybody come together, all the natives that were there come together and to do their best to try and stop this, and in a peaceful way, or I should say in a nonviolent way. And then it was really difficult to watch as they're being shot at with rubber bullets, and they're being and bean bags and the tear gas canisters being shot, and it was just hard, a really difficult time, but I met some really great people there, and it was just a life-changing experience.
Thank you again for being with us. We are wrapping up the show. Just really quick, I wanted to mention that he was part of the 20 people that from all over the country, 20 schools, that is part of this Adobe Educator Summit. So he continues to evolve with his work. Thank you for being with us again today. We will be here again next week with DJ Greedy. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.